The time has come to review all of the major developments from Notre Dame spring practice, including the most improved positions, biggest concerns, and a whole lot more on today's edition of Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast, and today is Thursday, April 25th, and thank you for getting your day started right here by making this your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018, and now I'm a producer at Fox Sports. As always, you can watch the show on YouTube or you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching along on YouTube, please like the video below and subscribe to the channel. Or if you're listening to the podcast, remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150. Win or lose, just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Okay, today on the show, friend of the program, Greg Flammang from Irish Sports Daily returns to put a bow on Notre Dame's spring practice session, and we evaluate where the team is at heading into the summer. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you will too. Check it out. All right, we had him on for the spring practice preview, and now he joins me once again for the review of spring practice. It is Greg Flammang from Irish Sports Daily. Greg, it's been a few weeks, but I feel like a lot has happened since the last time we spoke. So in your mind, what has been the most important development coming out of Notre Dame spring practice?
I would say linebackers and wide receivers. Linebackers specifically, there was a lot of questions about who's going to be ready to go, right? I think we knew Jack Kaiser would be kind of a steady presence in the room, but Maris Leofau leaves the team. J.D. Bertrand leaves the team. They're all off to the NFL draft. And so there's going to be a lot of snaps there, right? Where's Drake Bowen? Where is he in his development? Where's Jalen Sneed in his development? Those guys are going to be counted on for a lot of snaps next year. Jaden Osbury, where is he at? And I think coming out of spring, not just from the spring game, a lot of reports that we reported at Irish Sports Daily, Jamie Uyama and Matt Freeman reported that the linebackers have looked good throughout spring practices. So I think that was a very major part of what the team needed to have happen. There were a lot of question marks there, and of course, wide receiver, right? A lot of new pieces. With Chris Mitchell coming in, with Jaden Harrison coming in. He looked good, but unfortunately had the plantar fasciitis. So he had to sit out the spring game, but there was good development from Micah Gilbert. Jaden Greathouse continues to ascend. And then, got young guys like KK Smith and, Cam Williams look good as well. So those are the two groups that needed a lot of development and they got it. So it was nice to hear those things.
I want to focus on the linebackers for a little bit because I'm also really excited about that group, but it's interesting, especially considering what Notre Dame has had at the linebacker position over the past several years. I mean, J.D. Bertrand and Maris Leofau simply never came off the field, and now it seems like they have almost too many guys, which is a good problem to have, by the way. They just have a lot of young talent in that room. So do you think that we could see, I don't want to say a complete change in philosophy from Al Golden, but do you think that he'll change the way that he implements the linebackers in the defense now that he has a bunch of different guys who have a bunch of different tools as opposed to two guys who you kind of know what you're going to get in every play? Do you think that we're going to start to see a shift this year as opposed to the past 2 years?
I think you touched on the major shift that we'll see in that just there's going to be a lot of bodies, right? So I think you might see some player-specific roles for the linebackers. Like Jalen Sneed, he's going to be kind of like the Maris guy in terms of they're going to bring him in on third down. He's going to be, we saw Maris a lot of the time rushing the passer and sub packages, things of that nature. I think that's going to be Jalen Sneed. I think one of the biggest changes in terms of how they use linebackers is Jaden Osbury. He's one where they've been using him in the Aztec position. It's more of like think of like a kind of like a JOK role in the nickel package. Or maybe even like kind of a DJ Brown type role in that package. And that's interesting. They're trying to find a way for him to get on the field because he's such a talent, I think. But, there's only two linebacker spots available because Notre Dame's in their nickel a lot. So Jordan Clark's going to be on the field a lot. He's their nickel guy right now. So how they use Jaden Osbury is going to be interesting in terms of different roles for linebackers, but I think there's going to be a lot of specialized roles for individual players, right? KVA, what kind of role does he have? they're going to want to get him on the field. Drake Bowen as well. So I think what you see from linebackers as a whole might be similar to what we've seen from Bertrand and Leofau, but asking each individual player to do a specialized thing might be where Notre Dame goes with this. So that's an interesting thing to track kind of throughout the summer and then the fall camp.
Osprey almost feels like a secret weapon because JOK was before Al Golden. So Al Golden did not have the opportunity to work with him, and now he kind of has someone who's like him. I'm very hesitant to say, oh, he's the next JOK because he was such a unique player with his skill set, his ability to just light dudes up. Also a great athlete in open space, could cover wide receivers 20 yards downfield. You don't really see that many guys come through the program, but Osprey is probably the closest thing to it since then. So I'm really excited about the linebackers. Let's talk about the wide receivers here for a second because you're right. The room has been drastically overhauled this offseason. And I'm not going to lie, I wasn't blown away by the acquisitions of Chris Mitchell and Jaden Harrison at the time. I was like, okay, good pieces. The fact that they moved so quickly on Mitchell showed me that, hey, they must be really high on this guy because they prioritized him immediately. So I feel good about that group. I also like Micah Gilbert and what he has done. So what do you think is the ceiling for this group? Because they have so many different pieces. I like Jaden Greathouse as a potential wide receiver number one, but he's not your traditional wide receiver one. So how good can this group be? Let's daydream a little bit, especially considering what we've had to go through these past several years.
It's hard to say. I can't remember a time when Notre Dame had this many guys who are kind of similar in their, in their how good they can be, right? Like, I don't know that there's one guy on the team who's going to do absolute numbers, right? Like Will Fuller, he was a big numbers guy. Chase Claypool was a big numbers guy. I think probably closest to 2018 when Boykin, Claypool, and Chris Fink were all kind of in that 50, between 60 and 45 catch range for all of those players. And I think that might be the case for Notre Dame. But, I was thinking like guys like Jordan Faison, Bo Collins, Jaden Thomas, none of those guys played in the spring game. They weren't available for either Bo Collins isn't ready yet or injury or on lacrosse right now. If those were those Notre Dame's three guys, I could see them doing a great job, right? And rolling with those players, Jaden Harrison as well. So I think that there might be like almost like the hockey line change situation where you could just bring in 4 different guys, 3 different guys, and Notre Dame doesn't miss a beat. I feel like this team doesn't necessarily have an alpha on it, which is interesting, right? When you're talking about a wide receiver group that you're really excited about, usually there's one guy who you think, man, this guy's going to do numbers. I think most people think that Jaden Greathouse is going to kind of be Notre Dame's quote unquote best receiver. But what does that mean, right? Like, does that mean he's going to have upwards of 60 catches this year? Could it be 50 for like 800? Like, we don't really know. So like to ask the question of their ceiling, it's actually very difficult to answer because I'm thinking that it makes you think of the ceiling for an individual player and not necessarily a group. Like, I think the greatest beneficiary might be, Riley Leonard or Stephen, whoever ends up being the quarterback, right? If there's an injury somewhere, I think that the beneficiary might just be the offense as a whole. Mike Denbrock might be the person most happy about it, but I don't know that there's going to be one guy who's really good, but I know that they might have 8 guys who can come in and play like real quality snaps for them in a real role. And that does not happen very often for Notre Dame, and certainly not recently.
It's an interesting position for Mike Denbrock to be in, especially when you look at what he had last year at LSU with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, who are going to be 2 of the top receivers taken off the board in the NFL draft here in a couple of days. So now he goes from that having 2 just absolute studs. You don't really have to worry about anyone else to now having so many different guys who all bring, different things to the table. And I think it's going to be fun for him to sort of mix and match and try to utilize their skill sets. But I don't want to say, what did you think or what did you make of Mike Denbrock's first impression, because it's really his third impression, but also second time as the offensive coordinator. I know he's not going to show like a ton in spring practice, but still, Notre Dame was running 11 personnel a lot more. We started to see Jeremiah Love get some reps at slot receiver. So what did you make of this new look offense now that we've been able to look at it for a few weeks?
Yeah, I thought they stretched the field a little bit more than they normally would. Not necessarily through scheme, but just the plays that they were calling. They they stressed the defense vertically, which was nice to see. The way that they ran their inside zone was a little bit different in terms of the quarterback actually attacking the line of scrimmage while giving the ball. Like that was different. They had some different RPO type actions that I think we'll see as the season goes, and not necessarily in the spring game. I saw some RPO stuff that they were kind of doing off to the side. Like you said, they're not gonna tip their hand to anything, but there were little schematic things that were a little bit different. Aside from just the fact that, like I said, they stretched them vertically, right? And so a lot of vertical throws in this game, a lot of vertical options in this game. We saw a lot of checkdowns, right? And I think if you look back, there's a lot of checkdowns where there's not a ton of defenders in the picture because they've had to move back because the routes, complementary routes behind him, they're stretching them backwards. So stuff like that. There wasn't, like you said, there wasn't a ton that he showed that was different, or that's definitely Mike Denbrock. I thought we saw like a couple of those quarterback sweeps that Kenny Minchie ran, one of which went for a touchdown. That's something that's kind of a staple of his, right? So that's
reminded me of 2015 with Kaiser.
Exactly. Yeah. Some of that with Golson as well. So in 2014. So it's very easy to envision Riley Leonard around the goal line doing stuff like that. So, get your Riley Leonard quarterback run touchdown props ready to go, because I think that could be a feature.
We'll be right back with Greg to continue our breakdown of Notre Dame spring practice, but I wanted to take this opportunity to tell you about Monopoly Go. We've all been there, either as a player or as a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friend's money as I possibly can. That's right, the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. You can charge other players rent for your iconic properties, and you can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and play in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. Today's episode is also brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, and with great last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I actually just used Gametime a couple weeks ago to go to a Dodgers game, and it ended up being a great time, all thanks to Gametime. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view from your seat on your phone before you buy, but my favorite thing about Gametime is the pricing shows your total cost up front, and you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Let's talk about Riley Leonard. I can't believe it took us this long to get to the quarterbacks because there's just so much there. Has your confidence in Leonard wavered at all, given the fact that he's now had 2 surgeries so far in the calendar year, and we're only in late April? And, he's the person that I wanted to see. He's the person that everyone wanted to see the most, but unfortunately, we didn't really get to see it. Now, I give him a ton of credit for his involvement and the fact that he did everything he possibly could to get the most out of spring practice, despite the fact that he only had 1 fully functioning leg. So I don't know if my opinion has changed on him, but I certainly would have liked to have seen more. How do you look at that situation?
I look at it as just kind of unfortunate, right? Like you want to see him, like you said, you want to see how he fits. And I think that getting to see the other quarterbacks kind of fit in, right, and how they were able to play, you then be able to like project them into a situation where they're the guy, right? And we can't do that with Riley Leonard. And really all we've heard about with him is his ankle, right? There was the report that he had a procedure done prior to spring practice starting, and he then it was like, well, he's not going to miss spring, and then he wasn't going to miss spring, and then he made a couple of practices, and it's like he had another procedure done, and so now he's going to miss spring, and so no one ever really got to see him doing anything for Notre Dame, right? So I think it's natural to be down and to make negative assumptions based on the fact that every bit of news is there's something wrong with his foot, right? That being said, I don't know how fair that is, right? Like, he's out there doing stuff. He's behind line of scrimmage. Like, he's almost taking physical reps with mental reps. Like, he's making the reads. I don't know. I've never done that. I don't know how effective that is, but it's, he did it. And, he's obviously very invested. Just assuming that he can be what he's been, I just think he's such a good fit for this offense. And the fact that, we'll probably get to it in a second, like maybe the offensive line will need a little bit of help. Maybe they'll need an extra blocker in the running back to help the quarterback, run the ball. And look, a mobile quarterback can help some of the offensive line problems too. I just think he fits in very well with the way Notre Dame wants to do. And, we'll see. I mean, we'll see how it turns out in the summer and in fall camp.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be the biggest storyline heading into summer. And as I was watching him take those mental reps behind the line of scrimmage, it made me think, like, imagine if you went golfing and you just like sat on the tee box and you just were like, all right, I'm going to think about how I'm going to hit this shot. And then you don't swing. And then you just go to your next ball. And then you just think about the shot and then you keep going. Like, it kind of sounds
insane. You stand behind your buddy. Like,
yeah.
He goes to shoot and you're doing
Yeah, you're just like, oh, good. I would have done better. All right. Yeah. And then you go to you're about to chip.
That's
and you're
the draw I wanted to hit. I definitely would have hit a draw there.
Yeah. So it kind of sounds a little crazy. And as I was describing it to someone who does not follow Notre Dame, I was like, yeah, this is what he was doing. They're like, you think that matters? And I'm like, I do. Maybe I'm an idiot. We'll find out later on. But outside of Leonard, there's plenty of reasons to be excited about the quarterback room, specifically regarding the young talent in Kenny Minchey and CJ Carr. They were really the big story coming out of the spring game. Do you think that CJ Carr has a realistic chance to be the backup this season, no matter what happens with Angeli, with Minchey, whether or not they decide to stay or go? Do you think that CJ Carr is that ready to make a jump on the depth chart as a true freshman?
If Angeli is still around, no, I don't. Like, if something were to happen to Leonard, Angeli's he's played in games. He started a game for Notre Dame. Like, coaches will always defer to the guy who they've seen play, right? And in a real situation. Now, there is context associated with that. Like, if it were to come up, let's say in week 10, Notre Dame's got a couple losses already. I mean, with the new playoff thing, they wouldn't be messing around with that because they could probably be a playoff team. But like, if there's a situation where Notre Dame's kind of not in the playoff picture, then you might see that, right? Like, then it's different. But just in a vacuum, I don't think so. I think they'd go to Angeli, which like doesn't really say anything to me about CJ Carr, and it just says like Angeli has the experience, and they'll lean on that. It's interesting. I don't, I think that he did some good stuff, right? And I think he was more consistent than like Kenny Minchey was, right? I thought Kenny Minchey might have had the two best throws of the game, So it's like he's got a lot of upside there. His legs, his scrambling, were really good, especially for a guy who hasn't been live very often in a couple years, right? So I thought he looked good. There's a lot of upside there. I compared him to, I thought he looked like a little bit of Everett Golson back there. And we all love Everett.
I was surprised. I was like, man, when I just think of Everett as a runner, it's so different. Also gave me a heart attack every single time he ran with the ball because he just simply refused to tuck it ever, despite fumbling all the time.
Yeah. So, but I think the skill set is there. So I think there's something there. That's going to be interesting to track too. Hopefully for the program, they all stick around because there's something to build there off of all of them. And then, may the chips fall where they do, once Riley Leonard moves on. But it'll be interesting to track for sure.
With CJ Carr and what he showed in spring practice, is that about what you expected from him? Did he exceed expectations, or did you think, okay, yeah, he's the type of player I thought he was?
Coming into the game, it is what I thought, just based on everyone else's reports from then on. Talking to Jamie, because Jamie saw the jersey scrimmage, he was pretty glowing. If you had told me he would look like that before spring practice began, I would have said no way. Like, so from what I expected before any spring practices had taken place, no, I would not have expected that. He was, I can't, he's the best freshman. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of early enrollee freshmen, right? He's the best one we've seen. He looked as good as Jimmy Clausen did, at least. Granted, it's a practice, and we saw Jimmy Clausen in games, but like, that's kind of where it is, and I think we got to be honest about that. It looked really good. There were some things that you shouldn't do, but at the same time, he's showing all the throws. Yeah. He's showing poise. He's scrambling. He's showing command. It's everything you want to see in a young quarterback. It was really good from him.
Yeah, the way he just looks in total control with the ball in his hands is really just, I don't want to say like shocking, but just so impressive from someone who's only been around Notre Dame for a few months now. It's been really, really impressive, and it's hard not to overreact about what he could be in maybe just a year. All right, is the offensive line the biggest concern for you on the entire team?
Yeah, I think that's not like a big take or anything like that. I think everyone kind of feels like that.
Yeah. I guess a better way to ask that then is, how concerned are you about the offensive line, given the fact that it's pretty far and away the number one question mark?
Well, I think the center and the guards will be fine. I thought Billy Schrauth played well. I thought Ashton Craig played well. And I thought both Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler showed enough. I thought Rocco Spindler looked really good in the game. I thought they showed enough to where it's like, that's going to be okay. I think Emil Wagner played well enough to where it's I think that position will be okay. Jagusa did not look great. He did not have a great game in pass protection specifically, which is obviously you don't want that, right? Like that's a concern. It's just one of those things. Like, look, it was a question going in. It remains a question coming out. How concerned I am, I won't be like, this is a problem until we start hearing stuff in the fall that's like, it's not good. That's when I'll start to, because there's so much development that we don't know if they're working on something with him specifically this spring, if he's working on some sort of technique where his mind isn't totally clear during the practice situations. We don't know that. Obviously, he looked better in the bowl game, right? And now there's something going on. Maybe there's a technique thing they're working on with him. I don't know. But by the time fall comes, fall camp especially, if we continue to hear like it's a problem, it's a struggle, if they're moving players to try to get that position solidified, that's when it's like, okay, we might have to bake in the fact that left tackle is going to be a little bit of an issue. So it was a question. It remains a question. And so therefore it remains a concern, a legitimate concern.
Yeah, I made the point yesterday that part of the reason that the offensive line is getting so much attention is that for the most part, all the other position groups are in really good shape. Like there's no other glaring weakness. So everyone is focused on the offensive line. And then you consider the fact that the offensive line has been a staple of the program for the past decade plus. It makes it, I feel like it exaggerates the problem a little bit, but I'll admit I am pretty nervous about the tackles, just given how important that position is and what could go wrong if they don't play well. But I agree with your point about Emil Wagner. I think that there's a real chance that Wagner ends up beating out Baker in fall camp. It'll kind of be like a Pat Coogan situation last year where everyone was like, okay, Billy Schrauth is a starting left guard. And then that competition fell over. And then all of a sudden, Coogan jumps in and supplants him in fall camp. So we'll see how things shake out. We've spent a lot of time talking about the offense so far, a little bit about the linebackers, but I want to talk about the defensive line because it seems like, there's been a lot of talk about how it's a very veteran group, which it is. I mean, all graduate seniors on the starting line, but then you've got these young guys like Boubacar Traore, and even Bryce Young to some extent. Josh Burnham showed strides. How deep do you think that they can go on the defensive line across the board? Because, you want to keep your best players out there, and the best players are the older guys, but then you've got these young studs who could come in and disrupt plays almost immediately. So it's a good problem to have if you're Al Washington.
Yeah, I mean, even Jason Onye, right? Like, he looked good in the game. And it looks like they're going to get Gabe Rubio back. So if you're too deep, truly too deep on the interior, then that's obviously a very good thing. Boubacar looked really good in the game. RJ Oben looked really good in the game. Josh Burnham. You still have Jordan Botelho, who by all accounts is slimmed down a little bit, so he looks quicker. He's Junior Tuihalamaka's there. They've got a lot of options in terms of the D line rushing the passer and just kind of being athletic there. I think that, to be honest, I think this could be like a really special pass rushing group, especially when you factor in the fact that Jalen Sneed is available in sub packages, and like KVA is available in sub packages and come on the blitz. I think it could be a very special kind of group in terms of rushing the passer. If there was any concern, which it's not like it's something I say on the show a lot, we're monitoring. Like, I think rush defense I wonder if teams are going to be able to run on them, because I thought Notre Dame ran the ball pretty well in the spring, right? I thought the top two backs, Jeremiah Love and Jabron Payne, 17 for 94 in the game. Now, like, look, it's not huge numbers, right? They didn't get gashed or anything like that, but they did run the ball well. And especially with a mismatched line, right? Like, a bunch of guys who are kind of thrown together, they're not really going to, it's not like they threw out all the starters there. We had also heard that Notre Dame was doing well running the ball in other practices as well. So it's just something to keep an eye on if teams are able to run at them. While the linebackers are athletic and they're young, good in pass coverage, good rushing the passer, maybe the run fits aren't where you want them to be. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on there. But from a pass rushing standpoint, I think this is going to be a bang up group. I think they're going to be like a real problem for offenses when they try to throw the football.
Today's episode is also sponsored by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all in an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. What are you waiting for? Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Something else you've been monitoring is the secondary. Notre Dame is without Benjamin Morrison right now. They've got Jaden Mickey. They've got Christian Gray. They lost Clarence Lewis and Micah Bell to the transfer portal. So the numbers are getting a little slim at corner. Right now, they only have 7 scholarship players at the position. It looks like they might try to add someone in the transfer portal. Are you worried at all about the cornerbacks? And we'll include the safeties as well, because even though we didn't get to see Rod Hurd, I think that Adon Shuler, like they looked pretty good back there, and it made me feel a little bit more comfortable about the depth on the back end. But we went into spring thinking secondary is going to be one of the best units on the team. Still a very good chance that ends up being the case, but just with the unfortunate injury to Morrison and some question marks about the young players, I feel like it's not as much of a guarantee that they'll be as good as they were last year. So how do you look at that situation?
Well, losing Cam hurts, obviously. I mean, he's very good, right? So there's that, right? He was a really good corner for 3 years, 3-year starter. It's hard to replace. I think they're 4 deep at safety, so I'm not super concerned with that. Maybe even 5 deep if you consider Ben Minnick someone who they can play.
Is 4th Luke Talich?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I think they can play him confidently. So there's someone that they can put in the game. You know what? Like, from the depth of corner standpoint, you still have Carson Hobbs and Leonard Moore. So they're coming in. Who knows what they're going to look like if they can provide depth. And on the depth piece, I thought Chance Tucker had a good spring game. I thought he did some fundamental things that you say, like, if he had to play snaps, he could go in there and do the job and play well. Now, he's not going to be the caliber of what you want, right? He's not going to be Ben Morrison or Christian Gray, but it could be close to Jaden Mickey, right? So I think
he could be Clarence Lewis.
Exactly. And you have Jordan Clark as well, so he kind of fits into that, as someone who can be a 5th guy. So I think it's a good situation.
Okay, last one before we let you go. So before spring practice, you and I had the same bold prediction, which means it's probably not that bold if we both said the same exact thing. But in so many words, basically, we both agreed that Christian Gray was going to be the star of spring practice and that he would assert himself as a future like NFL stud. And I thought Gray looked good, but not quite as good as the absurdly high expectations that you and I had for him. So are you changing your stance on him at all? Or are you just sort of like, hey, let's wait and see in fall camp, because I'm still very high on him. I just think that I might have gotten a little bit ahead of myself, anointing him as like the next Ben Morrison in his first real spring practice competing for a starting job.
Yeah, I don't. He's not the talk of spring, right? So that prediction was not correct. But I don't think that has anything to do with him. I think it's just when you have three freshmen like Micah Gilbert, KVA, and CJ Carr, and they're playing great, they're going to steal the show. Early entry freshmen, when they're balling, that's going to be a big talking point, right? And fairly, right? So it has nothing to do with Christian Gray. I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to have a great season. But you get a bunch of freshmen come in and they show out. They're going to be the story, and that's exactly what happened.
Yep, and it's better than my bold prediction last year, which you and I talked about last time when I said that Caleb Smith, the Virginia Tech transfer, was going to end up being wide receiver 1, and he ended up quitting because he wasn't good enough. So I went from absolutely terrible take to kind of a lukewarm take, which means next year when we do this, I'm going to absolutely kill it. All right, before we let you go, let the good people know where they can find you.
At Greg2126 on Twitter. Hit and Hustle is on YouTube. Go search for us there. We got 2 shows a week at least. I do a lot of interviews with former players, not current players, but recently departed players. We did Derek Mays recently, so you can check me out there. Search Hit and Hustle on Irish Sports Daily on the YouTube channel. That's where you find me.
Greg, you're the best man. Thanks for doing this, and we'll have to do it again soon. Maybe sometime like late in the summer when we're bored out of our minds, we'll have to come on and I don't know. We'll find something to talk about, I'm sure, but I appreciate it.
Yep, you know where to find me.
All right, that's a wrap for this episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. I'll be back tomorrow morning with another one of my favorite guests, recruiting insider Kevin Sinclair from Irish Illustrated. There's been a lot of important things happening on the recruiting trail lately, and Kev and I will break it all down in tomorrow's episode, so make sure you tune into that. And also remember to subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast so you never miss an episode, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.